We asking what it takes to build systems where people don't have to fight this hard just to get their first real opportunity. Which brings us to one of our topics for today's show, the Second Look Act. To help us dissect this topic, we have two esteemed guests. Our first guest, Mujahideen Muhammad, is the co-founder of an advocacy and peer service organization named Pillar of Promise and a research assistant at the Center for Justice at Columbia University. During 24 and a half years of incarceration, he graduated with a bachelor's degree in science at the Hudson Link Mercy University College program, as well as a master's degree in professional studies at Union Theological Seminary. He is currently pursuing a master's in public administration at the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University. Since joining the Center for Justice, Mujahideen has been researching and advocating for the passage of the Second Look Act in New York, a bill being proposed in the New York State Legislature that would permit resentencing opportunities for people serving excessive prison sentences. On February 10th, 2025, Mujahideen was among a group of formerly and currently incarcerated individuals who were invited by Chief Judge Roland Wilson to speak in support of the Second Look Act at the 2025 State of the Judiciary at the Court of Appeals in Albany. As the leader and co-founder of the Pillar of Promise, Mujahideen is committed to changing the narrative about incarcerated people and expanding pathways to release, dignity, and long-term prosperity for those impacted by the prison system. How you doing, Mujahid?
Great to be with you. Great to be on with my comrade Patrick and Mari. I'm really looking forward to this conversation and explaining where we at with the Second Look Act and how we could advance this important legislation.
Thank you, my brother. Glad to have you on. Our second guest, Patrick Stevens, serves as a leadership fellow at the Center for Community Alternative, a freelance writer for the Appeal magazine and an advocacy council member for the Children Defense Fund. He is also an adjunct member of the New York City Bar Association Mass Incarceration Task Force and sits on its Correction and Community Reentry Committee. As a system impacted person, Patrick is an advert restorative justice practitioner and advocate for trauma informed care, an alumni of the Bar Prison Initiative, where he earned his BA in Social and Political Science, and New York Theological Seminary, where he attained his master's in leadership. He is a public speaker, consultant, and advocate for prison abolition. Through his work, Patrick bridged lived experience with policy reforms, empowering communities affected by the criminal legal system. How you doing, Patrick? Welcome to the show.
Good morning, beloved. It's a pleasure to be on the show. Always a pleasure to talk with you and Mujahideen and talk to the people about the work that we think is important.
And so let's jump right to it. The last time us three was together, we was in Green Haven. But let's for my listening audience, let them know how did you become, starting with you, Mujahideen, how did you become an advocate for the Second Look Act?
My concern with the Second Look Act was I did 24 and a half years incarcerated. And during the latter part of that incarceration, I really decided to improve my life through higher education, spiritual education, and therapeutic education. And in the process, I had the opportunity to bond and associate with a lot of individuals who are also striving the utmost to improve themselves through education. But unfortunately, these men had extreme prison sentences that did not afford them the opportunity to be reassessed for the hard efforts that they were making to improve themselves. So when I made my first parole board, one of the feelings that overcame me, was survivor's guilt. Because I believe that there are a lot of individuals who are worthy of the opportunities that me, you, Stanley, and Patrick have received with regard to returning to society after they have clearly transformed themselves. So I returned to society with a heavy heart for those I was leaving behind. A lot of these men were my mentors, my close peers. They helped with my growth and development. So there was just no way that I can forget about them. And fortunately, 1 month into my reentry, my former psychology professor, Dr. Geraldine Downey, she hired me at the Center for Justice, and the first task she gave me was researching the Second Look Act. And I just took the ball and ran with it because I realized that this was my opportunity to do work, uh, to do meaningful work for the men and women I left behind.
And
Yeah.
Patrick, same question to you. How did you become an advocate for the Second Look Act?
I, I think I've come to this point because we were doing a lot of this work while we were inside. And to Mujahideen's point, a lot of the men that mentored us while we were in prison got us into the organizations. I was president of the CAU at Chawanga for some 14 years, an organization that was started by Eddie Ellis in Greenhaven Correctional Facility in 1986. Like, this is our legacy. We've been advocating from behind the wall. We've been trying to rally people, talk to their families about the support that we need to get certain bills passed. And now coming home, I'm almost home 4 years now, and working with at the Center for Community Alternatives. The advocacy and organizer department was incredibly important in giving me a pathway to continue to do this work.
And thank you both. And, I got a drilling going on that's driving me crazy, but we're going to get past that. I just want to ask you this question, because like, particularly for you, Mujahideen, over the last 2 years that you have been advocating for the Second Look Act, what are the successes and challenges of this moment? What is the highlights?
I think the one thing that stands out in my mind is the support of the Chief Judge of the state of New York, Ron Wilson, and what that has meant to this movement. First of all, I like to say that Ron he's cut from a different cloth. You know,
Yeah.
having him as a supporter has been huge for this movement. He's held several symposiums, putting his neck out there on the line for what he believes in with regard to granting incarcerated men and women sentencing opportunities. And that kind of outward demonstration from an official like that has had ripple effects. Uh, I want to point out to the fact that there's been some recent resentencing cases, like that of Percy West and Corey Liggins, where the resentencing judges have, in their decisions, have made statements about there being a need for a second look mechanism to resentence some individuals. And in the case of Percy West and then Corey Liggins, the judges, Percy was in the first department and Corey was in the second department. They specifically mentioned the Second Look Act and its overall need. And in the case of Corey Liggins, who was sentenced to life without parole when he was 19, the resentencing judge mentioned Ron Wilson's support. So it goes to show you that his support is having a trickle down effect and on other judges and how they are examining these resentencing hearings. So they're sort of like, unbeknown to most of the population, to the population, there's a second look process that's happening on a very small level for certain individuals, and you have these judges mentioning that there's a need for a second look legal mechanism to resentence guys who've been clearly have these outrageous sentences. And so and I think that kind of demonstration of support from these lower court judges is because they now feel safe harbor because of the support of Ron Wilson. So that's one of the major successes that I like to point to. And briefly, concerning the challenges, I just think that where I'm at personally and what I think a lot of others at is that we got to do more educating to the public and not just relying on going to Albany a couple of times a year and talking to legislators. I think it's very important that we do more educating to the wider public. And in order to do so, we got to make sure our messaging is correct and that we don't use language that we use in our silos, that we use language that is intuitive to the wider public. Because there's certain things like that's not as intuitive to the wider public with regard to the Second Look Act, specifically with regard to statements like long sentences don't make us safer. That's true. But that's not intuitive to someone who has no idea what we're advocating for, because it requires us to explain deterrence and incapacitation. So the key, I believe, towards getting this legislation passed is galvanizing the public, getting to understand how this legislation benefits them. Because the main thing you hear from the holdouts amongst the Democrats and the legislature is that our constituents are not concerned with this. So we have to start doing more educating of these legislators' constituents. And in order to do so, we got to make sure our messaging is very on point and that we're emphasizing the right things around rehabilitation. And if we want to mention costs, okay, it's not just about saving costs, but how are we diverting those costs? Getting more statements from harm parties. So that's one of the challenges, is how we can make the idea of resentencing individuals more palatable to the public. And in order to do that, we got to do more educating, and we got to do make sure our messaging is one that the wider public could more easily digest.
Patrick, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, everything that Mujahideen said is correct. I think with respect to the narrative of how we talk about this work, it's very important to be able to cut through the noise, all of the political nonsense, the things that we hear about incarcerated people and what their capacity is, which mitigates against releasing people. Like, we really have to be on point when we challenge people to really think more progressively. The other thing I would say is we really need to think a lot about how we galvanize people to put better judges in position and to protect the judges like Rowan Wilson, like Judge Zayas, like Angel Cruz and others who are very forward thinking, who are progressive thinking, who have experience with formerly incarcerated people, who understand the system, who understand that people change and evolve over time, and that what you did 20 years ago doesn't make you the same person now. They want evidence, they want support for those things. And I think to the extent that we continue to beat that drum and support people who support us, the more successful we'll be at doing this work.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Our message, our approach, that we need to get out more to the community and start really holding town halls, going into the synagogues, the churches, the mosques, and really explaining to the constituents of the legislators what these bills is about and how it will help benefit them. Because the whole thing is about how will it benefit the community, not just the individual coming out, but the community itself. I want to ask you both a question. We all was recently asked to participate in Green Havens Beyond the Block event and speak on a panel about the Second Look Act.
Yeah.
Individually, what was that like going back inside the facility and speaking to those that we left behind?
Wow.
Patrick, go ahead first.
Yeah, I'll say, you and I drove up together, and it was so the first thing for me, it was probably the second time that I gone back into a prison since I've been released to do this work. And it's always surreal. It's always very weighted. I'll say I was so galvanized by seeing some of the brothers that we had left behind, that I had known for 10, 15, 20 years, that are still doing good work. Guys are going to school, guys are running programs that are impactful. And it was really surreal. And I'll tell you, that night I could barely go to sleep. I could barely go to sleep. It was that emotionally charged. It was just a really good feeling to see all the brothers and be able to do this work with them, and to talk to brothers and see what they're up to and see how their spirits are, how they're holding up. And a lot of the brothers are doing well. They're just looking for opportunity to make themselves better, to make their societies better, to make their communities better. The communities that some of them damaged when they were younger, and before they went to prison. And people really want to do great work. And it's just good to be around that energy.
Muhammad?
First of all, shout out to Albert Santana, Jerome Curry, Mario Castro, Jose Rodriguez, Sean Peace,
All right.
Joseph Wilson, Michael Cobb, George Alfred, Sherm Adams, and Rafael Martinez for their incredible performances, which will soon be on video.
Yeah.
These guys, they definitely carried on the Beyond the Block tradition, which originated in Sing Sing in 2023, and they had another iteration in 2024. I think the public is going to be very moved by the performances that these guys put in. To me, it was I was just so grateful because I always tell people the most rewarding part of this advocacy work for incarcerated people to receive second looks is the recognition, acknowledgement of the people inside. That's what I do it for. And to be select for men inside to select me to come to speak to them about what concerns them, to me, that's everything. That's priceless. And one of the things that stood out to me, again, Chief Judge Ron Wilson and Chief Administrative Judge Joseph Zayas were there. They attended that event. I
Mhm.
watched Chief Judge Ron Wilson take the time to really speak to some of the men who, particularly those who had death by incarceration sentences, like
Mhm.
Sherman Adams, Rafael Martinez, and really talk to them about what he's doing to advance the Second Look Act, talking about the DAs that he's going to meet and things of that nature. And he really was very considerate. To me, that resonated with me because I know how much that kind of support means to the men inside to have someone of that stature there talking to you, telling you this is what I'm doing to help you get out. You know, this is what I'm doing to help um those uphill battles that guys are fighting against the court. So to me, that's one of the things that stood out for me, just how much him and Chief Administrative Judge Joseph Zayas made himself available to the guys and try to assuage to the best of their ability, guys' concerns with overcoming these monstrous sentences.
Mhm.
Amy, bro. And I'm with you both. It like Patrick. I couldn't sleep after I came back. I was up the whole night, just reminiscing, replaying the whole event over my head. And
Mhm.
it's bittersweet to I know to all of us when I say bittersweet because we left a lot of comrades there, and we have survival guilt that when we go back in the place and then we get to go home, but we can't take our brothers with us when we know they deserve the same opportunity and chance that we received of being allowed to come home. Because as you know, I had a death by incarceration sentence of 62 and a half years to life. And without granting a clemency, I would still be in there. I probably would have been in that program on that stage when you brothers came in to sit on the panel. I got a question for both of y'all, because we moving forward, there's a lot of work that's going to be need to be done out there. So what are the plans for your organization, the Pillar of Promise for advancing the second look? And the same question applies to you, Patrick. What are the plans of Community Not Cages and CCA, in advancing the second look at, what do you want people to do? How can they get involved in what you're doing?
First of all, I want to point out several initiatives that I'm really excited about. Also, got to include my work at Columbia University at the Center for Justice. Me and my colleague, Dr. Noah Remnick, we have a tremendous Second Look Act report that's about to drop sometime in May called "Ending Endless Punishment." I think it significantly contributes to the literature around Second Look Act. I think it's argumentatively unmatched. So I want people to look out for that. I think it's going to be powerful, and I think it's going to further serve the cause of granting second looks. Another thing I want people to be aware of is the Beyond documentary, which is based on the Beyond the Block event that was held in 2024. It's a tremendous documentary that captures all of the themes that the wider public needs to understand about incarcerated people, a size of incarcerated people they have not been exposed to. And I think this mechanism is much needed to reach different segments of our population and allow men to convey to them what makes them deserving of a second look. And briefly, they're going to be Beyond is going to be screened all over the place. Universities. We have screenings with sentencing judges next month, with legislators in Albany next month. So look out for that. It's going to be huge. There's a huge impact campaign merging the documentary with this movement to pass sentencing reform, not just the second look at elderly parole, fan time parole, things of that nature. And two other things I want to make the people aware of is that me and several of my currently incarcerated friends, Raymond Rashid Wallace, Taden Townsley, Paul Cortez, and Michael Shane Hale, we co-authored the last chapter of a book from a legal scholar from Spain who did some postdoctoral work here at the Center for Justice years ago called The Real Pain of Punishment, Prison Belonging, Prisons, Belonging, and the Quest for Humanized Justice. That book will be coming out in July. And that's also going to be that's also very important as far as, contributing to this movement. And also, my organization started a blog for incarcerated writers at www.thepillarsofpromise.com. And I'm in early discussions about turning that blog into the book. And the reason why I mentioned these initiatives, why is these initiatives important? Because I feel like we have to not only advocate for the second look at, we have to create outlets and mechanisms for the men and women to to contribute uh, their voices and their ideas to these discussions. I think that's very important. Is finding ways to make the men and women inside feel valued, feel seen, feel heard, because that serves a lot of purpose. That gives them the ability to contribute to this movement, to advocate for themselves, essentially. And then also there's an intrinsic reward about being recognized and being acknowledged for the contributions that the men and women are capable of. Because there's some very astute men. There's many astute men and women inside, and I think part of advocating for them is creating more outlets, trying to opportunities for them to get paid. I think Columbia Law, which Patrick could speak for, they set a precedence by creating a fellowship in which six men and women inside are currently they're currently co-authoring the next edition of the Jailhouse Lawyers Manual. So I think we need more initiatives like that, because we don't know when this legislation is going to pass. It's politics. It's not based on merit. But what we can do is continue to facilitate transformative programs that's conducive to men and women receiving a second look, and also finding outlets for those men and women to engage the wider public, to help change the narrative and to feel seen, heard, and to feel valued. I think that's very important, that we advocate in a complete way. And we find ways for the men and women to advocate for themselves.
Patrick, briefly, could you tell
Yes,
me?
yeah, real briefly. So thank you for that, Mujahideen. Thank you, team, for inviting us. There are a few things that we would love to make people aware of. On May 8th, we will be having a second look symposium at the Brooklyn Law School, the Forcelli Center. That's 205 State Street, Brooklyn, New York. The Chief Judge will be there. Some of our advocates will also be there talking about Second Look and explaining to people how they can join and how they can support. Also, May 12th, we'll be back up in Albany, having our Advocacy Day on May 12th at the state capitol. If you would like to join us, you can go to our website, or you can type in Communities Not Cages. It will send you to our website, and you will see where you can sign up to RSVP to attend these events and to show up and give your support and be involved. And so if you have family members, friends who want to get in the struggle, please join us at the symposium. You can reach out to me at pstevens@communityalternatives.org if you want more information. And with respect to Columbia, we're doing a lot of great work with Columbia. The Legal Literacy at Work Fellowship is an incredible opportunity to help gain more legal access with people with respect to the Jailhouse Lawyers Manual that many of us use to litigate our cases and fight for our rights while we're inside. So if you can join us for those two events, that would be amazing. Reach out to us, stay connected to our coalition, Communities Not Cages, and join us in this work.
Brothers, before I let y'all go, any parting words for our incarcerated listeners, their family, and to our community at large?
I would like to say for our incarcerated leaders, just don't be discouraged. Continue to strive for self-improvement and find ways to be generative. Like one of my dear brothers, Rashid Raymond Wallace, always say, be fodder for the argument. And I would like to say for the advocates out here that just focus on the work. I always tell people, don't worry about the outcomes. Focus on the work, because there's much work to be done. And we have to find the ways to continue, because, it can be difficult doing this work. But I always tell people, like, let's just do the work. There's a lot of areas where the message can spread, and we could do a more effective job in conveying that to the wider public.
Yeah,
Patrick?
for me, simply, I just want to send my love to all of the brothers who have been with me, who've been doing this work, who've been doing the right thing, who really want to make their communities better. We see you. We love you. We're still thinking about you. We're still doing this work to get you home. You just got to keep doing the things that you're doing. Keep being life-giving, keep spreading that light. Even though you're in a dark place, we see you, bro. We see y'all.
I want to thank you, brothers, for coming on. I really appreciate the both of y'all coming on, and we got to do this again and get some follow-ups to see where the second look at is, and hopefully a bunch of the bills that Mujahid just spoke about passed this semester, this session,
Yeah.
because we talking about lives or individuals on the inside that's, their lives is counting on the passage of some of these bills. Some of these individuals have been in prison for so long, and these bills, these laws, these second look at the elder parole, Dan Tomley will give them an opportunity to really make their case for release, because we know that if given the opportunity that we received, that these individuals will come home and be assets to the community instead of a liability. All they need is the opportunity. All they need is the chance. And hopefully these bills will become law and give them that opportunity and chance. Thank you, brothers, for coming on. I appreciate you. I love you. And it's always a pleasure to share space with you.
Always. Thank you, King.
Thank you for having me, Stanley. Thank you, Mari.
Thank you,
Mari?
man.
Yes, thank you for being with us, gentlemen. And in case you didn't know, I am a high school English teacher. Throughout the day, I would love to bring you to my school to speak to our future scholars.
Absolutely.
So we will be in touch because social justice is important and education is important. So we need to get you on those school stages.
Definitely.
Count us in.
Thank you, folks. You're listening to On the Count WBAI. And